Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest from the hard Brexit paper, the Daily Express, as it seems to be arguing that removing freedom of movement was crazy, in their words. So let's go over yet another article where Brexiteers complain about the consequence of their own actions, but don't stop being Brexiteers. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So I'm still working through the Brexit stories of consequence from last week, really, because there was a load of them. In this particular case, France's Constitutional Court decreed that UK citizens with second homes in France could not get special treatment when it comes to staying in France after the UK chose, remember, to end freedom of movement. Various people in France have said, nothing surprising about this. In post-revolutionary France, they're not that keen on people being treated differently in the eyes of the law. So now the Express are complaining that these poor Brits have to sell their second homes in France because of crazy EU rules. Now, the Express tends to ramble at the best of times, and having read the article, it's not entirely clear what they think the rules should be exactly. EU rules stipulate that citizens of third countries may stay in the Schengen area for 90 days out of every 180. Now, 90 days still sounds like a decent amount of time to basically just holiday in a second home, so I'm not entirely sure what the complaint is as such. If the Express are arguing that these people should be allowed to remain as long as they like, even though they don't have an EU passport, then they're arguing for people to be able to come and go in a foreign country as they please, staying as long as they like. Sounds brilliant. I'm all in favour. And the EU is one of the few places in the world where this system, seemingly proposed by the Daily Express, actually exists. It's part of freedom of movement and applies to all EU citizens. It was also one of the options which seemed to be available to us, even leaving the EU. But alas, the government, heartily endorsed by the Express, said, no, we don't want that. Are you sure? Yeah, don't want that. Of course, it's possible that the Express don't actually want full freedom of movement. They don't say. They may want something like the UK system, where citizens of third countries can potentially be allowed to stay for up to 6 months at a time on a standard visitor visa. However, sovereignty and all that. France was one of the founder members of Schengen, and they helped draw up the rules in the first place. And they clearly said, no, we want 90 days out of 180. So if the Express are not actually calling for mutual freedom of movement between the UK and Schengen, then they must be calling for other countries to be unable to exercise their sovereignty in deciding the rules for who can come and go in their country. So either the Express want freedom of movement, which they explicitly campaigned against a few years ago, or they want countries to not be able to decide the length of stay for foreigners on a visitor visa. But I'm pretty sure they argue for the opposite of that position as well. And the problem with the Express is they do all this belly aching about the EU and a whole list of other organisations or people they hate for some reason. It's on the big woke board. And they never really say what they want to be the case instead. They go, oh, this is terrible, it's ridiculous, this. Well, what do you want? We don't know. Makes it very difficult to know what form of hypocrisy they're pushing on a particular day. But what they are most certainly doing is identifying the fact that British owners of French second homes being unable to stay in them whenever and for as long as they like is a problem. They're specifically citing it as a problem, a downside. Crazy, in fact. And because it has only become the case as a direct result of the extreme Tory Brexit, it is specifically a downside of Brexit. And just for good measure, they also remind their readers that ETIAS will be coming online later this year. The implication is that they think it's an affront that people will have to pay for the visa, even though it's actually free if you're under 18 or over 70. It is also a very nominal fee. It's €7 and lasts for 3 years. Sounds like a bargain to me. You get the feeling that the only thing keeping the writers at the Express sane is the thought that the EU is going to collapse sometime next Tuesday. Only it's been about to collapse sometime next Tuesday for about 8 years now. A more cynical person might suppose that maybe these swivel-eyed Brexiteers aren't quite as informed as you might imagine. On a more serious note, what we have here again is a pro-Brexit outlet identifying problems with Brexit without either an apology or support to change the terms, at least, of our Brexit. And people need to point this out more. people need to say, if you see someone reading the Express, what are they banging on about? Oh, it's ridiculous this. What do you think should be the case instead? What do you think should be the case instead? Brexiteers have spent the last few years complaining endlessly about the consequences of their own actions. It's not EU spite. These rules apply to all third country citizens. They apply as much to US citizens as UK citizens. And do you know who helped come up with many of these EU rules that they bellyache about? The UK as a founder member of the EU. We didn't come up with the Schengen rules because that's Schengen. You know, we're not being singled out. We are being treated exactly the same as every other third country, which is exactly what we asked for. On leaving the EU, we were asked, do you want some special consideration? Do you want to remain in the single market? We said no. We wanted to be a completely separate country. We wanted to be a third country. We cannot continue to have our national debates led by people who just blame everyone else for what was always the consequences of their actions. It makes us look ridiculous abroad, apart from anything else. We have to stop people being able to think it was ever going to be the case that Brexit was just one way. That we could stop foreigners coming here, because that's what much of it was about, but that we would still be able to swan around Europe at our leisure. That we would be able to diverge our market and still enjoy free trade. No, we can't. And this year we're going to see more consequences for that diversion. Like, we haven't even seen the full impact of leaving the single market because we unilaterally, illegally and recklessly have not been applying standards checks to risky goods entering the country. We're going to start doing so. Not full standards checks. The plans are not for the full standards checks, but what we have planned are still going to be disruptive. Some foods will just not be available. Some other plant and animal products will become more expensive and maybe scarcer as well. Woe betide the government if I struggle to find any Danish blue later this year. I wonder if the Express will blame the EU for this as well, even though they are our import controls, as well as being the result of leaving the single market. Or will their Brexit whining just pivot to blaming Labour the second they're in power? Because you may think, well, surely they'll hold on a bit, Phil. It'd be ridiculous to blame Labour literally the day after they come in power over a system that the Tories have been developing for 5 years. But then it sounds ridiculous to blame France or the EU for Brits not having freedom of movement in Europe when we made a big song and dance about ending it. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.